As you know, the Meat Eater Live Tour is on April 23rd through May 5th. Chances are in a town near you. What you may not know is you can win tickets to each of these events just by going to a backcountry hunters and anglers pint night. There's going to be a pint night in each of these towns: San Diego, Salt Lake City, Tempe, Anaheim, Boise, Sacramento, Missoula, Portland, Tacoma, where you can compete in Meat Eater trivia and win not only tickets to the show, but a chance to be on stage with all of us. So get your butt to a pint night, and we'll see you on stage.
You're listening to the Sportsman's Nation Podcast Network, brought to you by Savage Arms. Now, we all know Savage makes some awesome rifles, but did you know they've recently released a new shotgun called the Renegade? Now, there's a lot of awesome things about this shotgun, like its ergonomic, well-balanced design, its patented stock pad that knocks down recoil, and something that these guys are very proud of called their drive gas system, DRIV. And what that stands for is dual regulating inline valve gas system. And what this is basically allows the shotgun to shoot 3-inch magnums or 2 3/4-inch cartridges, all with the same consistency. If you want to find out more about the new shotgun, the Renegade from Savage Arms, visit savagearms.com/renegade.
My name is Clay Newcomb, and I'm the host of the Bear Hunting Magazine podcast. I'll also be your host into the world of hunting the icon of North American wilderness, the bear. We'll talk about tactics, gear, conservation, but we'll also bring you into some of the wildest country on the planet, chasing bear. Happy spring, folks. It is go time for black bear hunting in North America, and we ourselves, as we speak, are in wild places hunting bears. We are going to re-release an episode called Black Bear Shot Placement for Dummies. This is coming at a great time, and this is, again, a really comprehensive conversation that we have that dissects the nitty-gritty, nerd out, just technical talk of bears in Bear Hunting Magazine, fun, conversational, long form, fashion, fun stuff, good stuff. You're going to enjoy this podcast. Use some Northwoods Bear products when you're baiting bears this spring. I like the Gold Rush Fryer Grease Additive. Had a guy ask me today what you're supposed to do with that. He asked if you're supposed to pour it on the ground or if you're supposed to pour it on the food. Pour it on the food. Pour it on your bait. The grease that has the Gold Rush in it. Hey, check out our friends at W Hunting Supply. They've started a podcast. Check it out. All right. Hey, while you're at it, check out our friends at Houndsman XP podcast as well. Doing some good stuff. And lastly, the Western Bear Foundation, nonprofit hunting conservation organization, standing up for hunters out west, fighting the good fight that, we humans have been hunting critters with projectile points for a long time. And there's people that don't think that we should. And so we have to support the organizations that are fighting for our rights to be human. So hope you enjoy this episode, and I know you will if you're interested in bears and good hunting if you get out into a wild place. The topic that we're going to talk about on this episode is shot placement on black bear. And we're going to get into several different topics that are highly relevant. But before we get into the episode, I want to introduce who I've got with me here. I have directly to my left Ryan Greb. Ryan is a longtime good friend of mine, and Ryan was killing bears while my mama was still wiping my nose. It's true.
You crazy, man.
Now, Ryan's traveled with me all over Canada, but more than that, Ryan's hunted in Arkansas for years. Ryan's been on the podcast before, but he's he's hunted bears in Arkansas since, well, for years and years, killed a lot of big bears, bow hunted bears a lot. And so I consider Ryan an expert for sure. So he's here. And then on my right, someone that Colby's been on this podcast before. I've got Colby Moorhead. Colby is now news to everybody. He's working full time for Bear Hunting Magazine. So Colby is also a longtime friend of mine that is now, he's full time working for Bear Hunting Magazine, helping us with all kind of stuff. So if you ever call the global headquarters, you'll probably talk to Colby. And Colby is a bear hunter. He's a new bear hunter. Went on his first bear hunt back in the fall and took a really nice bear. And so we've got a good mix right here in that we've got a lot of experience, but also, Colby's new to bear hunting. So you might have some questions, or you might hear us talking that might have some insight in something that somebody else might have.
I just feel sorry for him that he has to hang with you here in the office.
Yeah.
During the day.
Every day, all day. Yeah. And he's right underneath the big bear over here.
You need to make him a cubicle over here where he won't have to look at you.
Like box him in. Yeah, we could box him in. But, well, hey, let's jump right into this. And I'll kind of give the precursor to why this is relevant. Most people in North America, most of the guys that are listening to this podcast have been trained on whitetail deer anatomy for shooting any big game. We've been trained to hunt ungulates, deer, elk, moose that all have a really similar body structure. They have a similar bone structure. They have a similar anatomical or organ structure, but they also have short hair. They don't have big layers of fat. And so basically shooting a bear is different than shooting an ungulate. And there's lots of different variables inside of it that are important for a first-time bear hunter or even a veteran bear hunter. I mean, the truth is that in most situations, and Ryan, would you agree with this? Most situations, if you just took a deer hunter out and didn't tell him anything, he could probably go out and shoot a bear.
Yeah.
I mean, and not have any problem. But in the finer tuned points of bear hunting, if you took that same guy, and this is the way I would describe it, if you took that same guy that was trained as a whitetail hunter and put him on 10 bear hunts, I'm going to say 3 of those 10, he's going to mess up. Probably. Simply because of lack of understanding of a few principles.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a good?
Yeah. Bear posture's constantly changing,
Yeah.
You're looking for that broadside shot more often than not. I mean, deer, that's the preferred shot anyway, but a lot of people take the quartering away shots, but bears, if you can get that broadside, that's usually money.
Yeah. Well, let's start off by talking about bear anatomy. I read a article that was written very recently that was circulating on Facebook. Clicked on it. It was about 10 I think it was 10 things about spring bear hunting, and one of them was about shot placement. And this author said that bear organs are further forward than a deer, which I want to quickly say is exactly opposite of what I have found.
Yeah. Not
just in what I've read, but we did the first year I had Bear Hunting Magazine. We went up to Alberta. And we killed 6 bears in 5 days. We actually did a necropsy on a bear where we took the carcass with all the internal organs inside and stripped off the layers of rib, or stripped off the rib meat so that you could see into the rib cage, and tried to determine like where the lungs would lay out. And man, we made some incredible diagrams that were in Bear Hunting Magazine. They're also online. And to make a short summary, bear vitals are slightly further back than a whitetail. Would you agree with that, Ryan?
I agree, yeah.
So let me just say that is a big premise of black bear shot placement, and brown bear for that matter. The vitals, it's not like they're just like in the middle of the body, but they extend slightly further back. I found that the lungs of these bears went all the way back to the very last rib, which if you can imagine shooting a whitetail at the very last rib, you'd be pretty far back.
Yeah, liver.
You would kill that. You'd kill the deer because you'd get liver. Mm-hmm. But the lungs the very tip of that lung, and I'm not saying that all the way back at the last rib there was 8 inches of lung. That's not what I'm saying. The lungs are like oblong shaped. They're like long and deep towards the front of the animal, and they go back like this. Mm-hmm. And so back to the very last rib, there was a little bit of lung. So I'm not saying that's where you want to hit them. The second part of that, Colby has some experience with this. Colby, you really made a mistake by shooting a bear far back on the first hunt ever with me.
Yeah.
You were like the prime target to just make an example out of, but you got the right posture for it here.
I'm glad I could take on that for everyone.
Oh man, it was on video. It was all there. But for whatever reason, and this perhaps it has to do with the anatomical structure of the bear, but you can shoot a bear further back than a whitetail and be okay. There was an article that we had published a few years ago called Middle of the Middle, which there are a lot of Canadian outfitters that tell their clients to shoot a bear in the middle. And I think the way it started out was they said, hey, shoot the bear in the middle. And the client said, what do you mean the middle? And the outfitter goes, the middle of the middle. I mean, straight up middle of the bear. And what this article is written by a guy named Rob Nye, Saskatchewan outfitter that I know. And he was taught that by some other old outfitters. And, man, when you shoot in the middle of the middle, you have a lot of room for error. And that's the whole point of it, a lot of room for error. Now, I don't like shooting them in the middle of the middle. I like to go about 4 inches back towards the shoulder from the middle of the middle. And when I say the middle of the middle, I'm talking about the distance between the front legs and the back legs. I'm not including like the head of the bear.
Right.
But like middle of the middle, I like to go about 3 to 4 inches back towards the shoulder. So slightly further back than you would like try to heart shoot a bear. And that's maybe the biggest thing that's different about bear hunting versus deer hunting is that as deer hunters, we were always taught to try to heart shoot a deer, okay, which would be low and tight. You don't want to do that with a bear. Do you agree, Ryan?
I agree. You've got all that hair hanging down below. That hair could be 2 inches long, could be 4 inches long. Right. So definitely you want to try to get it the vertical line in the middle of the body.
Yeah. The problem with low and tight on a bear is that what Ryan said, imagine a big mature boar that's got 2 inches of fat beneath the rib cage. He's also got hair that's a minimum of 2 inches, but could be hanging down as much as 4 inches. And so what you perceive as the silhouette of the bottom of that bear is actually probably 6 to 8 inches above that would be vital. And so a veteran bow hunter that was hunting with me at one time who had taken a lot of whitetails with a bow, I mean a lot of whitetails, bear hunting for the first time, and he just tried to heart shoot this bear. I mean, just low and tight. And he 10-ringed right where he was aiming. We never found that bear. Totally hit it in the brisket, and he was fooled by the silhouette of that bear. Now, have you ever hit a bear low and tight?
I don't think I ever have. Now, the 2016 up at Bear Pro Safaris, I shot that one low and back, but I've never shot one low and forward.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you had, because I have another story of a friend of ours here in Arkansas that had a monster bear come in, and it was just kind of one of those deals where I think he would say he was probably just on autopilot and was just trying to heart shoot it and shot low and tight. And it was a big bear, so it was exaggerated, long hair, lots of fat, thick rib cage. And so, I mean, he just basically shot the bear in the brisket, where if it had been a whitetail, he would have 10-ringed it. That's a big deal with black bears that you don't want to do with archery shots, is low and tight. You want to be further up. And another thing is that A bear doesn't jump the string like a whitetail. I mean, especially with video and all the stuff on that we're seeing now, almost 100% of the time, these whitetails are dropping at the sound of an arrow. Even if you still kill the deer. I mean, like, we've killed all these deer with bows, not on film, and you kill this deer. Those deer are dropping a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes dropping 16 inches before the arrow gets there at like a 30-yard shot. A whitetail is a prey animal. He has a flight response to danger, a massive, quick flight response. A bear has some of a flight response, but not near as much as a whitetail. Would you agree? In terms of dropping and going.
He's not on pins and needles all day long like a deer is.
Right.
You know,
thinking he's going to get eaten.
He's an apex animal and probably stays relaxed, most of the day. So he's probably not sensing a lot of danger.
And so the translation of that into bear shot placement is that you don't have to aim low. Like as bow hunters, we've been taught to aim low on a deer. Man, you don't want to hit low on a bear.
No.
Because that silhouette is so deceptive. And I would say those are the biggest things. Like if we're talking about shot placement, slightly further back than a bear, don't be afraid. Most people aim so far forward because they're afraid to hit so far back. Because in the whitetail world, we have been preached to our whole life, don't hit them far back, don't hit them far back. And honestly, I would rather hit a whitetail far back than I would further forward. I think people that has been preached to us so much because guys have really not been very good blood trailers. That's the truth. I've found that inside of my excursions, inside of other hunting circles, is that guys sometimes make a shot that they probably could recover that animal, but they really don't have the skill to blood trail that animal. And so a marginal shot all of a sudden becomes a marginal but mortal shot becomes an unfound deer. And obviously I'm not suggesting shooting deer far back at all. But that fear that's been put in us to hit an animal too far back has pushed us forward to the animal. But with a bear, you can be a little bit further back.
A little more forgiving.
Little more forgiving if you're hitting in that middle of the middle, or that mid section.
Right.
Colby, tell us about your bear. Just kind of like where you perceived the shot to be.
Yeah, it was a straight up gut shot. I was aiming like middle of the middle, but then he started moving, and I was already in my shot sequence. So
yep.
So like vertically, it was in the middle, and I think that was what made things come together in the end.
Right.
It was just that, and then backing off for the night and waiting till the next morning to look for him. But I mean, he was pretty rigged up, like he had died, like he'd been dead a while.
Did you shoot a mechanical or fixed blade?
No, I was shooting a 4-bladed fixed.
Really?
Yeah,
Passed through?
trick.
Yeah, it passed through.
Oh yeah, passed all the way through. I mean, it didn't get liver. It was like way back, and we backed out. Came back the next day, and now granted, this is a situation where somebody who didn't have a lot of experience might have had a hard time trailing that bear. I'm not going to lie about that. But Corey Grant, all-terrain, he's a good blood trailer. And I mean, we found just spots of blood. I mean, it was a tough trail, don't get me wrong. Right. But the bear ran probably 200 yards, 250. And we easily recovered the bear. I mean, we had to fight for it a little bit. I mean, just in that there were times when we lost it and we were going off a scuff mark in the leaves going down the hill. But, I mean, within 45 minutes, we were standing over the bear.
Yeah, I think the thing that surprised me was when the blood stopped hitting the ground and you just started seeing smudge marks on the sides of trees.
That's right.
And stuff.
Yep, you gotta use everything in your arsenal when you're trailing any kind of animal.
Yeah.
Like if we had just been looking for bright red blood drops on the ground, we would have never found that bear. But we were staying on game trails. We started splitting up, going down different game trails, and you learn to look at the backside of all these leaves because this bear, and we'll talk about how bears are notorious with a not ideal shot. They're notorious for not bleeding much. But point is, we found the bear, no problem. That's what these middle of the middle guys say all the time. Is like they say they'd rather have a gut shot bear than a bear that was shot too far low and forward or shot straight in the shoulder, because you are not going to break through a bear's shoulder with archery equipment. I don't believe. I mean, perhaps there's a
You'd have to be very lucky to.
yeah.
You probably have to hit some kind of artery, something to even kill something with a far forward shot like that. And he's, I've never trailed a bear and recovered one as far as Kobe's. Usually if you get trailed over 100 yards, that's
been your experience.
Yeah. I've had some bad shots, and I've trailed them jokers, like you say, 300, 400 yards, and on minimal blood, never find them. But usually a lethal shot on a bear, 100 yards or less, they just don't, they don't carry their weight that far, it seems like.
They kind of give out quick if they're hit good.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and jump into what I was saying about how a bear bleeds, and the importance. The whole point of this is going to be the importance of getting 2 holes so this would factor into the shot angle, but also your equipment that you're using. But a big priority with bear is to get 2 holes. So it goes back to what you said at the beginning. A broadside shot is what you want. A broadside shot gives you the shortest distance between 2 points when the arrow's going through. And even if the arrow's not sticking in the ground on the other side, but if the broadhead at least penetrates the skin on the other side, you've got two holes. The bear is going to bleed more. But bears are notorious for not bleeding because they do have a lot of fat. They do have a lot of fur, which is like a mop. I mean, it's soaking up some of that blood, not all of it. And if you just double lung 10 ring a bear, I mean, he's going to bleed pretty good. But when you get into that marginal category, like with Colby's, if you had only had 1 hole, didn't have an exit wound, we would have had a much more difficult time finding that bear. Mm-hmm. But he was bleeding on 2 sides because we got that penetration. And so that goes back to, on whitetail, a quarter and away shot is a pretty good shot.
Yeah.
It's a smaller animal, smaller boned, not as thick a hide, not as thick a hair. You're probably going to get a pass through, and unless you hit that offside shoulder on a quarter and away shot on a deer. And I mean, we even look for a quarter and away shot on a deer oftentimes. But boy, you want to get 2 holes. The other thing about getting 2 holes is that most bears are being shot out of tree stands, especially in a bait situation. And if you get 1 hole from a high elevated position, that means your entry hole is going to be high on that animal, and that dude is going to bleed very little.
Yeah. You need a lower hole.
Yep.
That's where you're going to get your
I guess
leakage.
you could set up a dungeon type setup where you had a hole underneath and where you were shooting up into the bears.
Oh, man.
Like dig a hole. It's a whole new setup. You're supposed to laugh at that, Colby.
Yeah.
Then your entry hole would be on the bottom of the bear.
Yeah,
and he would bleed.
That's for all those duck hunters out there. They can just
like
get
a
low
like a
and
duck,
shoot up.
like a duck hole, like a what would you call that?
A
pit blind.
Pit blind for bear bait.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, okay, so getting 2 holes, okay, and that even goes into your equipment. Like at Bear Hunting Magazine, we are pretty much adamant about not using expandables for bear. Mm-hmm. Okay. There's going to be a ton of people that maybe even are listening to this podcast that will say they have killed bears with expandables, as have I. But I have heard too many stories and seen for myself too many examples of when they have not performed as well as a fixed blade broadhead. I mean, just by very principle, it does remove energy from an arrow for those blades to expand. Large cutting diameter is going to cause more friction on that arrow, reducing the energy driving that arrow into the animal. If the whole objective is to get 2 holes on a big animal, I mean, a big whitetail deer is maybe at most 20 inches to, I don't know, maybe a big Canadian deer or big Midwest deer would be 24 inches wide. I doubt it. You're trying to penetrate a block 18 inches. With a big bear, trying to penetrate 30 inches. Yeah. I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Not counting all the hair you're trying to shoot through.
Yeah. The conclusion that we've come to is just that if your priority is to get 2 holes, it's best to use a fixed blade broadhead. Mm-hmm. And there's all kind of fixed blade broadheads. There's all kind of cut on impact broadheads. I would rather have a small hole, but have 2 of them, than have one big hole. I've also heard stories from reputable bow hunters and archers that they have seen expandable heads get clogged up in hair. Like they hit a bear, had reduced penetration, killed the bear, extracted the mechanical broadhead to find it just covered in hair, like where it was catching hair and dragging hair into the animal. Do you have any experience with expandables?
I've killed probably half of the bears I've shot with expandables and had great luck. I haven't had one fail yet, but I've been shooting a fixed 4-blade for the last 4 or 5 years. But in the early years when I first started bear hunting too, I'd just shoot a 3-blade, and it's all about
with a good shot, like a broadside shot at a reasonable distance, when you're not having a crazy angle. I mean, I agree with you. You could probably kill every bear in the woods with an expandable.
Yeah, I'm shooting high poundage. I'm shooting right at 70 pounds, and all my shots are 15 yards or less. And you're trying to take that broadside, and 90% of the time you are going to punch through the ribs.
Did you get penetrate? You got 2 holes, a lot of pass throughs.
Yeah, almost.
Well, okay. Tell us why you're using a fixed blade head now.
Just didn't really think about it then. You want to dot your I's, cross your T's. I can see, a fixed blade. You are going to get that penetration. You are going to get that pass through on most every shot. So just trial and error, and I've got to where I feel more comfortable shooting a fixed blade. Confidence in it, and like you say, I think. You don't have to have the big gaping hole.
Right.
And, if you
I guess the question is, what do you gain by shooting a expandable?
I guess the volume of the cut, maybe you're cutting a few more arteries or something like that. But, there is always that thought in the back of your mind of that broadhead failing and not performing like it should. Fixed blade, you pretty much eliminate that.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the expandable broadhead is made for whitetail. I mean, it's a smaller animal, not a lot of hair, not thick hide, not thick bones, and they're great. And if you get a marginal shot, and I've killed a gob of whitetails with expandable heads back in the day, and if you get a marginal shot on a whitetail, I would rather be shooting a big, fat expandable. But they're really not made for bear. They're really not designed for a big bone, thick haired, thick fat animal. So it's kind of, you could kill every bear in the woods with an expandable. That's the truth. But I believe, and somebody that's as good as you, Ryan, and as experienced as you, I'm being serious. Like, you're not a good example for someone to show an expandable that's messed up. But I would say for the average guy, if he were the average bow hunter with, there's all these different levels of experience that people have. If he was shooting expandables at 10 bears, it's going to cost him a bear.
It will.
In 10 bears, I believe.
Yeah.
And you may be on your 5th bear, and it's not cost you a bear, so you're still going. When, if you had been shooting a fixed blade, you'd have killed all 10. That's what I believe. And now, everybody's got to do what they think. But that's a pretty good topic. Let's talk real quick, too, about setup. A lot of people ask about archery setups for bear. And the question is, can I use my whitetail setup? And my answer to that is basically yes. I mean, like, I'm shooting around 60 pounds. Actually, the bear that I killed in Oklahoma this year, Batman, 550-pound bear, I was shooting a 50, well, it may have been 60 pounds. I want to say it was the high 50s, just 10 ring, no problem. I ended up hitting kind of the offside shoulder. He had his leg down, so I didn't get just a complete pass through with him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Ryan, you were there with me on the recovery. That bear was crouched, and he had his elbow back like this. I hit him right here, and it actually went down through his shoulder and, like, was sticking down in his inside the hide.
Yeah.
But in his front leg.
So when you gutted the bear, you found the arrow actually in. I remember we were talking about
when we went
night.
to recover James Lawrence's bear 10 days later. David Miller found my iron wheel broadhead on the ground.
Really?
Yes. I'm trying to think. It's still kind of a mystery to me what happened, because I never found an exit hole, but David Miller found 8 inches of arrow in my 225 grain iron wheel broadhead. We were tracking, James killed a bear over there in the same place. Mm-hmm. We went over there and tracked it. And he came back and handed me that. And I said, "Where'd you find that?" Because David was with us when we recovered it, you know? I mean, so anyway, it was just a weird deal, because, that bear's front legs were, 10 inches in diameter.
Yeah.
So in that arrow, just at the steep angle. But point being, you don't need super heavy poundage. Ryan's shooting 70 pounds. What was your bow set at?
50 something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were shooting pretty low poundage.
Yeah.
Average weight arrow. I figure your arrow weight, Colby, was in the 400s. I mean, you're shooting 100 grain
slick
broadhead. Trick.
Yeah.
Slick trick Magnum.
Yeah.
And that's a great head.
Yeah.
I love a slick trick broadhead and have for years.
Yeah.
I did shoot the iron wheels this year, mainly because of my traditional stuff. But if you, and I'm sponsored by no broadhead company, but if you just said, "Clay, pick your poison for broadheads," I'd shoot a 100 grain slick trick Magnum. Now for compound, I've actually shot their Viper trick, which is not a traditional, not a traditional, traditional archery head, if I can put it like that. But so the main thing would be just getting the right broadhead and shot placement. It's not about having an 80-pound bow. So you can use your whitetail setup. People evaluate arrow penetration based upon kinetic energy. Momentum is actually the correct way to evaluate the possibility for arrow penetration. But basically, momentum measures a vector, which vector momentum measures the directional force. Kinetic energy just measures force, just like an explosion almost, just like it just measures how much energy is present in this thing. Basically what I'm getting to is arrow weight is more important than speed. There was a time when in archery everybody was worried about speed. It's just like shoot a really fast bow with a light arrow. But a really fast bow with a light arrow does not penetrate as well as a slower bow that's shooting a heavier arrow. Anyway, this is all nerd talk, but momentum is the correct way to measure arrow penetration, not kinetic energy.
Didn't speed come from where you're wanting to get it there faster so the whitetail didn't duck as much?
Yeah. Like my dad, who is bow hunted his whole life, he loves speed, and it's because he didn't want to have to judge yardage. He always wanted a bow that would shoot flat to 30 yards, so that just any deer that showed up in the woods of Arkansas, which basically most of the time you can't see much more than 30 yards. If a deer showed up, he just put his first pin on it. Because in his experience shooting slow bows all through the 70s and 80s, he was missing deer because of misjudging yardage. They didn't have rangefinders. They're good rangefinders. He had these rangefinders that like combined images. Have you seen those, Ryan?
Yeah.
Where it's like you put your eye in it and you dial it and it like combines
That's old school.
Yeah. And so his whole thing was speed so that he didn't misjudge yardage. As I went through that, I was like, well, we've got rangefinders now. You can sit in a tree and you can range everything. So you pretty much know yardages for tree stand whitetail hunting and for bear hunting. So I would rather shoot a heavier arrow and get more penetration because I did have some mishaps with not getting penetration with whitetails when I was younger. Okay, we've talked about bear anatomy. We've talked about shot angles. We haven't talked as much about shot angles, but like you really don't want to take a super steep quarter and waist shot on a bear. Now, if that's all you have, you can certainly kill a bear that is at a steep quarter and angle. But you're probably going to forfeit that exit hole. And so you just got to be prepared for that. You got to make sure you're on your A game. Ryan mentioned this earlier, is that one of the biggest differences between deer and bear is that a bear, first of all, is a black animal. The color black is designed to absorb light and to not give away much. I mean, like if you just look into a black piece of paper, it's like all you see is black. But if you looked at a white piece of paper that maybe was folded just a little bit, like you could see the shadows. White shows shadows, shows shape. And so a bear can often look like just a black trash bag, and you can't see where the shoulder comes up. You can't see the ribs.
No definition.
No definition. Where a whitetail, Ryan, has short hair, light colored hair, has a very defined muscular body. I mean, you can see the shoulder, you can see the ribs, you can see the rump, you can see the muscles. So when you look through the peep on a bow at a whitetail, you can see right where you're aiming. A lot of times with a big bear or a little bear, you pull up and look through a peep and you feel like you're aiming at a black trash bag. Mm-hmm. And I mean, even inside of me having killed some bears, I still struggle with that sometimes at close range.
Yeah.
Like close range, you draw and you're like, holy cow. Like in 2015, the bear that I killed in Oklahoma, I don't know why that one got to me, but I drew the bow, bear just right there. I mean, like 10 yards. And I looked through the peep and all I could see was black. And I was looking around my peep to try to get try to just figure out where my pin was. And I would lean back in and look and lean back in and look. And finally, I felt like I had where I wanted to hit. I shot, and if you remember, I shot far forward.
I've had that same problem in low light conditions right before dark, trying to see through your peep. And like you say, no definition on a bear. You want to make sure that body's not cupped. Yes. Sometimes they'll roll them hips to the side and be cupped. That's not the best. Just wait for them to maybe expose that leg or just get, completely broadside. But, yeah, it's can be tricky sometimes.
Well, see, and that's the next point is that a bear can do a whole lot more stuff than a whitetail. Mm-hmm. A bear could be sitting on his butt. A bear could be standing up. A bear could have his feet up on a tree. A bear could be cupped. And that's probably, to me, one of the things that gets most people. We've made some videos about this. But a bear could look like he's broadside, but actually his spine would be like in a U. A deer can't even do that hardly. No. But like a bear could appear to be broadside looking at you, but actually 80% of his vitals be covered because he's cupped like a dog. Well, that's not a good example, but
in a half moon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or a lot of times in baited situations, bears come in and lay down. Lots of guys have shot bears laying down. And again, you can do it, but it's trickier because those vitals are compacted. He's literally laying on his rib cage. Those ribs flex. And shooting a bear laying down, you're probably shooting at a target that is 20% less in size than it would be if the bear was standing up. Would you agree with that? I mean, that rib cage would flex just a little bit, and those vitals would compress. So basically, a deer doesn't just have the flexibility to do what a bear could do. So that throws people off, Ryan. Yeah. People, especially people that aren't familiar with seeing bear, as a bear comes in, he might be standing up, he might be laying down, he might be sitting on his haunches, licking his bottom feet. He could do all kind of stuff.
I've seen you do that yourself.
Sit on my haunches and lick my feet. Yeah. Occasionally. That's massively. When I first started hunting bears, I remember just kind of being like confused by watching a bear move. And I think that's kind of what freaks people out sometimes when they're hunting bear for the first time. It's just to see an animal that's just different than what they're used to. Colby, was that your experience?
Yeah, it was really surprising. Like, for being so big, they're pretty sensitive, or like they're pretty like they know what movements they're making. It's like they're so articulate with their movements. Yes. I guess it would be this thing. They're definitely the yoga animal. Yeah. If you like to do yoga, the bear's your spirit animal.
Yeah. Ryan's big into yoga.
You betcha.
The yogi.
Yep. So one more thing. Let's talk about. So most of what we've talked about here would relate directly to archery hunting. I do want to say that hunting with a rifle is going to be different. Now, bear anatomy stays the same. All the stuff stays the same in terms of the actual bear. But with a rifle, shooting a high-powered rifle, you're kind of in a different ballgame because you can shoot a bear straight in the shoulder, high in the shoulder, and just drop them. you can shoot a bear that's facing you. I would never suggest shooting an archery bear just head on.
No.
I mean, I know it's worked for people. I mean, I'm sure it has.
Yeah.
But,
well, bullet, you're getting that shock, that energy.
Hydrostatic shock.
You're shutting down the electrical system. Basically, shoot them in the shoulder, head on, like you're talking about, quartering away. A little more forgiving on definitely a rifle.
Right. So with a rifle, I would have to say that it would be fairly similar to a whitetail in principle. I mean, because you can shoot them in the shoulder, you could shoot them head on, you could shoot them quartering away. That wouldn't be a problem. You don't have to obviously judge you don't need to shoot low because they're not going to jump the string. I mean, so rifle hunting is quite different. And this podcast really isn't about rifle caliber, but a lot of questions about caliber of rifle. And it kind of goes back to the same thing with archery. You can kill a bear with a 30-30 and a 150 grain bullet. I mean, there's lots of bears. Probably 30-30's probably killed as many bears as any caliber, just from the old days of when that was a main cartridge. But the bigger the better. The bigger the better with bear, because they are a big animal. You do want to hit them hard. My gun of choice currently for black bear, rifle of choice, a 300 Win Mag with a 225 grain bullet out of my Best of the West rifle. But I did want to just clarify that a lot of the delicate things that we're talking about in terms of shot placement for black bear is about archery hunting, not as much about rifle hunting. But hey, closing comments or thoughts, Ryan?
No.
Let me ask you a question. What would you say would be the biggest mistake that you have seen first-time bear hunters or just inexperienced bear hunters make on shot placement? Biggest mistake?
Bears aren't like deer. People are excited. They finally say, hey, I've got a bear here in front of me, and it's in range. I need to hurry up and take the shot. Bears are pretty patient, especially on a baited hunt. You can wait and wait and wait for that perfect shot. You don't have to be in a rush.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to take that first shot opportunity.
Right.
Just wait for the right shot.
Yeah.
I've made mistakes and, not made the right shot, but, it's all about patience. But I guess, it just comes with experience. So, more bears you get a chance to be around and harvest, you'll learn from that and take it to the next hunt. But, like I say, just be patient, wait for the right shot opportunity.
Yeah.
You don't have to be in any hurry.
That's a great example, because in whitetail hunting, most of the time, you have a very short window to execute a shot on a big buck. I mean, like, take the first shot you get. Like, that's a good ethical shot. That's kind of the way we're preached to, because most of the time these animals are just moving through areas that we're hunting.
Right.
But especially on a baited hunt, or even on a spring hunt when a bear is feeding out in the meadow, you got time.
Right.
If that animal is feeding, he's going to be there for a while. So you don't have to rush it. So your number one thing with a first-time bear hunter, new bear hunter, would be rushing the shot.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm basing that on hunting over a bait where the bear's occupied. Like you say, he's not passing through. You're going to have some time to, especially if the wind's right and he don't know you're around, you've got a little bit of time to play with, and like I say, the right opportunity to present itself.
Yeah. Very good. Colby, what do you think?
I mean, those were the things that Corey told us, or told me whenever I went up there. It was just, to be patient and make the right shot. And we were patient. I mean, we watched that bear for a while, and the right opportunity was there. I think one of the things that happened, I didn't realize he was moving,
That's right.
And so I think what happened was I was looking through the peep. And like, once I closed my other eye and just like focused on him, I couldn't tell that he was moving.
Yeah.
Because it was the right opportunity. He just started moving right at the wrong time.
So you probably hit right where you were aiming.
Yeah.
He just wasn't in the same spot.
He moved.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a good thing to think about, is that once you initiate that shot cycle, you've got to be super flexible. I mean, your shot cycle has to be quick. And when I say shot cycle, I mean like draw your bow, and from the time you make the decision to shoot until the time you actually execute the shot, you need to be able to back out of it. You know, I mean, like, because in that situation, you were like, okay, I'm going to shoot. And in 2 seconds time, he moved, you know, and you went ahead and shot, you know. And I think that's just learning, being in bow hunting situations in archery and executing the shot, you know, which is, and anybody could have made that mistake, but.
Yeah, I think, I had been drawn back for a while. I think that if I, in the future, like,
for a long time.
if in the future, like whenever I get an opportunity or I think I have one, I think I'm going to just, you know, if I'm drawn back for too much time, just let it down and just reassess. Cause
you know what, though? That being said, my strongest trait, I think, when it comes to actually taking an animal, especially with a compound bow, is knowing when to draw. And I love drawing before they get there.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I like doing what you did.
Yeah.
I felt like you did the right thing.
Really?
I mean, like, the bear was just at any second going to step into the correct shooting position. So you were drawn and ready. Now, once you start holding it for over a minute or something, I mean, like, if you start to feel your body be compromised and, like, you should have you can let down that situation. But, like, the biggest thing that I see people do is, like, a deer or bear is coming, and they wait till it's in position to shoot before they draw their bow. Man, I'm not talking about like draw a minute before it gets there, but I'm anticipating the shot, drawn and ready. And boy, when it steps to where I want to shoot. And that's probably more a whitetail thing because a lot of times they're moving. Hey, we're gonna end this podcast. I hope that you've learned something here. And ultimately our goal is to make as many good, ethical, quick killing shots as possible. And bears are big, tough, unforgiving animals. But when they're hit right, they go down easy. And so, hey guys, thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we're gonna have continue. We're gonna have a few more podcasts that are kind of this style where we're just talking about a specific issue. But hey, keep the wild places wild. Why?
Because that's where the bears live.
As you know, the Meat Eater Live Tour is on April 23rd through May 5th. Chances are in a town near you. What you may not know is you can win tickets to each of these events just by going to a backcountry hunters and anglers pint night. There's going to be a pint night in each of these towns: San Diego, Salt Lake City, Tempe, Anaheim, Boise, Sacramento, Missoula, Portland, Tacoma, where you can compete in Meat Eater trivia and win not only tickets to the show, but a chance to be on stage with all of us. So get your butt to a pint night, and we'll see you on stage.